Have you ever thought about who really owns your family's ancestral property? We're about to dive into the fascinating and pretty complex world of property law, where your family history and your legal rights are all tied together. And it really all comes down to one big question. So, who is it? Is it the oldest living relative, or does everyone born into the family get a piece of the pie? Well, the truth is a little more complicated than you'd think, and the answer revolves around a very specific legal idea: being a coparcener. Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get a handle on what a coparcener actually is. Then we'll look at the rights and, just as importantly, the responsibilities that come with it. We'll also clear up the difference between a coparcenary and a joint family, and finally, see how this whole concept is changing today. All right, let's start at square one. Imagine your family's ancestral property is like a members-only vault. A coparcener, then, is basically someone who gets a key to that vault the very second they're born. And that's really it, in a nutshell. It's that simple, but also incredibly powerful. This isn't a right someone gives you or that you have to earn. Nope, it's yours just because you were born into the family. This is the absolute bedrock idea that everything else is built on. But here's the catch. Just because you have the key, it doesn't mean you can just walk in and do whatever you want. As our source material points out, this whole thing is a two-sided coin. On one side, you've got some serious rights. But on the other, you have what the law calls disabilities, which is just a legal way of saying strict limits and rules you have to follow. So let's talk about the fun part first, the powers you get as a coparcener. These are the special privileges that come with being a member of this very exclusive club. For starters, you have a right to be supported by the family estate. That's a principle that was legally confirmed way back in 1918. You also have the right to actually use and enjoy the property along with everyone else. And here are the big ones. You have the power to demand a partition, which means you can ask for your specific share to be divided out. Plus, you can legally challenge anyone who tries to sell off the property improperly. Okay, now let's flip that coin over. Because with all that power comes some pretty serious responsibility. These are the rules of the club, and they're just as important as the benefits. Right off the bat, this property is not your personal piggy bank. You can't just decide to gift your share to a friend or make huge changes to the property on a whim. You're also on the hook for family debts, at least up to the value of your share. And when it comes to managing the whole thing, that's not a free-for-all. It's handled by one specific person, the family manager, who's known as the Carta. Now, what's really fascinating here is the tension this creates. Think about it. You have the individual right to go in and demand your slice of the pie, but you absolutely do not have the right to just give that slice away to someone else. It really hammers home that this is all about preserving a collective family asset, not just building up your own personal wealth. This leads us to something that trips a lot of people up. You'll often hear the terms coparcenary and joint Hindu family used like they're the same thing. But in the eyes of the law, they're actually quite different. So let's unpack that fine print. And this table illustrates the difference perfectly. A joint Hindu family is the big umbrella. It's a much broader group. You can join it through marriage, for instance, and it might not even own any property at all. But a coparcenary, that's a much smaller, tighter circle inside that family. You can only get in by birth or adoption, and it absolutely must own ancestral property. So think of it like this. Every coparcener is part of a joint Hindu family, but not everyone in a joint Hindu family is a coparcener. Now, you might have noticed a little date on that last slide that basically changed everything. It was a year that completely reshaped this centuries-old legal tradition, and that year was 2005. Before 2005, it was a sons-only club. Only sons could be coparceners. But then an amendment to the Hindu Succession Act came along and gave daughters the exact same right from birth. This was a truly massive step for gender equality. It blew the doors off the family vault and made it a place of equal inheritance for both sons and daughters. So you see, this isn't some dusty, forgotten law we're talking about. These principles are very much alive. They're being argued and interpreted in courtrooms today, especially when it comes to actually selling ancestral property. Remember the Carta, the family manager? Well, they have a very special power. As this court case from 1978 shows, the Carta is allowed to sell or transfer the property. The legal term for that is alienate, but there's a huge condition. It has to be for the benefit of the whole family. And that's the key takeaway, right? The Carta's power isn't unlimited. The whole system has built-in checks and balances. If the other coparceners think a sale isn't actually good for the family, they can use their right to challenge it in court. It's a way to protect the group's interest from the actions of just one person. And all of this brings us to the big picture. We've seen these rules change over time, most dramatically in 2005. But as our families continue to evolve, becoming smaller, more spread out across the globe, and more diverse, it leaves us with one final, really important question. How will these ancient rules about property keep adapting to the reality of the modern family? It's a legacy that's still being written.